All right. Did you guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So here we go. So Mr. Wilcox, when were you appointed Director of Finance for the town of Enfield?
I was September 2015. I was appointed acting Director of Finance to replace Lynn Nenny, who left. And then I was appointed the following July 1st.
So,
So it'll be July 2016.
were you appointed by the town council or the town manager?
The town manager, Brian Chodkowski.
Were you approved by the town council?
I don't believe it's a position that's approved
Okay.
formally. It's, I think the town manager has the authority to name the finance director.
Okay.
I believe he discussed it with them, but
Prior to your appointment, had you been employed by the town in any other capacity?
yes, I was the deputy finance director.
And when did you first take that position?
December 1st, 2010.
Prior to taking the position in December 2010 as the deputy finance director, did you have any other position with the town of Enfield?
No,
By the way, do you live in Enfield?
I do not.
Okay. Where do you live?
Southwick, Mass.
Okay. Is that far over the border?
It's that little dip in the northern border of Connecticut. I live in it. If you look to the west of 91 on the map, there's a little dip in the Connecticut border.
Okay. So that's not far then. That's right over that's fairly close over the line then, I would assume.
Oh yeah, it's like 12 miles from here, but it's more west.
Interesting. It's interesting how in Enfield, so many people, a lot of people seem to live in Massachusetts. It's closer than living in a lot of places in Connecticut. So it's interesting.
That's true. Yeah.
We're on the other side of the state, where, and even further in on the Corporation Council for Norwalk, where we interview people and we're getting people applying from like Bedford and other parts of New York, because it's quite frankly a lot closer to get to Norwalk, especially with no traffic, than people coming from Milford.
Right.
So previous to working for the town of Enfield, I think you said it was you started your initial position in December 2010. Did you work for another municipality?
I did. I worked for the town of Simsbury.
Okay. And when did you work there?
The exact dates, I believe, were 2000. I don't know the exact dates, but it was 2005 through just prior to when I came here. So it will be November 2010.
And what was your position in Simsbury?
I was the deputy finance director, assistant treasurer.
And prior to working in Simsbury in that position in 2005, I think you said, did you hold another position with Simsbury?
I did not.
And what did you do prior to working with Simsbury?
I was the accounting manager for Eastern Connecticut Health Network.
And approximately when did you work there?
Just before 2000 to just before sometime in 2005. I can't remember, like I said, the exact times, but I want to say April, but I'm not sure of that.
It's okay. And when did you work anywhere before that?
I did. I worked for a medical products manufacturer, and that was Clinipad, CLINIPAD.
And what did you do there?
I was an accountant.
And how long did you work there for?
About 2 years. They went out of business.
So that would have been what years approximately?
98 through 2000, or not through 2000, through 99. Wow.
And did you do anything before that by way of employment?
I did.
And where did you work?
I was the Travelers for 8 years prior to that. And I was an internal audit, and I worked for Bloom Shapiro out of school from 87 through 89.
Where did you go to school?
Alfred University,
Where's that?
Western New York.
Okay. And did you receive a degree from there?
I did, yes.
Bachelor's?
Yep.
In what area?
Accounting.
And then after you graduated with a BA in accounting, did you further your education at all?
No,
Are you a CPA?
I am.
So you, I guess, went through the process of obtaining your CPA designation,
Yes,
which is fairly significant, I would say.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Um, and so in order to obtain your CPA, you have to do certain coursework and also pass a test. Is that correct?
Yes.
Other than certification as a CPA, do you have any other certifications?
No,
Any other professional certifications?
no,
Do you have any professional designations associated with your position as a finance director in the state of Connecticut?
no.
Are you a member of any professional organizations associated with your position as a finance director?
Um, Government Finance Officer, GFOA. I'm a member of them, but they don't do a whole lot.
Is that an organization, statewide organization?
There's a national one, Government Finance Officers Association, and then there's the GFOA of Connecticut, which is the local chapter of it.
Have you done any professional training associated with your work as a finance director or deputy finance director in Connecticut?
I have not.
What is your role? How would you describe your role as a director of finance in Enfield?
I'm responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the finance department, assist with the development of the budget, and responsible for dealing with the annual audit. That's mainly it.
How about your role as a supervisor? Could you tell me about that?
I supervise the finance department, which is made up of the treasury division, which is the deputy finance director, that's payroll, accounts payable, and general accounting. Sorry, not general. General accounting is actually there's another division named general accounting. There's a general accountant that I ultimately supervise. Then there's revenue assessment and collection. I supervise that division. That's obviously assessment, tax assessment, property assessment, and tax collection. And then I also serve the general services division, which is mainly for purchasing.
What is your role with regard to the tax assessors department and the tax collectors department?
I supervise the tax assessor and collector, and by default, they're the whole division there too.
So is it fair to say that the tax collector and tax assessors departments are under your supervision?
They are, yes.
Does the town have an organizational chart as to, who supervises who?
We put together one for our annual financial statement. I believe it's in here.
Yeah, I assume you'd have one. Could you please send an email to me whenever you get a chance?
Sure.
And what's been your role? Let me ask you this. Let me retract that question. Have you had a role with regard to the town-wide revaluation process?
Not, not a hands-on role, no. Basically, I mean, I supervised the division. I knew what was going on as far as, we're hired Vision Appraisal to come in and value all the properties and, deal with coming up with new property values for everything. But I'm not an expert in appraising, so I kind of leave that to the people who know what they're doing.
Is it fair to say then that you had a limited role, if any, with regard to the revaluation?
Yeah, I would say that.
And is it fair to say then that with regard to the revaluation, I guess your role was the things were reported to you as to what was happening, and your involvement was that you only got involved. You would only get involved if there was a problem where you were asked to get involved. Is that a
Yeah.
fair assumption? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, I didn't really, I wasn't going to be going out to any of the properties or actually dealing with vision appraisals on a day-to-day basis or anything like that. But I, kind of know the process a little bit, but not, but I like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in property values, so.
Sure. Can we take a 1-minute break? I just want to print something out here.
Sure.
All right, so recording is back. So have you had in your role as the finance director, have you had any role with regard to the Board of Assessment Appeals process each year?
I have not. I understand the legal process for it, but and I guess I have in a roundabout way in that I talk with the assessor and get their opinion on how much I need to adjust the grand list for my budgeting purposes when I'm developing my mill rate for the next budget year.
And I think you testified earlier your role with regard to the revaluation was fairly limited. And so just I assume so. I just want a couple follow-up questions on that. Do you have any particular experience dealing with these quadrennial applications for exempt property?
I do not.
Did you have any experience in dealing with the assessment of properties under Connecticut Public Act 490 for farmland, open space, or forest land?
No, I've never dealt with them. I mean, obviously I've asked a few questions when questions came up on it, but other than that, I rely on my assessor for that.
Do you have any particular experience with regard to the valuation of commercial or industrial properties?
None.
Do you have any particular experience with the valuation of residential properties?
No.
Do you have any particular experience with the valuation of personal property?
No. Well, actually, I do have a little bit of experience. I did personal property tax returns for ECHN.
Well, you're an accountant, so that would have been
right.
Putting down on the declaration what the values were.
Right. It's cost less the depreciable percentage on those.
So I think as an accountant, then is it fair to say you've had some limited experience with valuations associated with personal property?
Yes.
You, over the years as a finance director in town, have you had any experience with the public pertaining to complaints from property owners regarding assessments?
Um, no, not really. You know, occasionally I'd hear about one, but didn't usually get too many complaints for anything.
So maybe it's a better way to ask a question. Prior to Todd becoming your assessor, did you have any experience with any complaints from the public regarding the assessor's office?
No, not that I recall.
Once
I
Todd
mean, I get
became
more
this,
on the tax collector side, you know, it's
yeah,
related to assessment, but they're the face of the company because the town, because they have to they come to pay the tax collector, not the assessor. And so that's where I hear about it more.
once Todd became the assessor, did you have any complaints from the public regarding assessments or
Yes, we got
exemptions?
more complaints.
How would you quantify the number of complaints you got once he became the assessor?
I got probably 5 or 10. I mean, Todd referred a few to me. Some went directly to the town manager. Kind of hard to say whether, you know, I doubt that the 5 to 10 that I heard were all of them.
With regard to the 5 to 10 complaints that you heard when Todd was the assessor, what was your impression of, you know, overall? Let me ask you, overall, did you have an impression of the complaints?
Most the overall, what I would say is I felt that the assessor was justified in the assessment that was made, whether that, you know, came through, you know, vision appraisers, then through Todd or through, you know, I felt like there was justification in every case for what he said. So, I mean, you know, some of the things that I've subsequently learned, you know, prior we would deal with the 490 questions, and there seemed to be gray areas in a lot of that stuff. So, but like I said, every case there was justification for the decision that was made. So, I didn't really see any problem.
Okay. And what was your and did you work with the prior assessor in your role as a finance director or the deputy finance director?
I did, yes.
Overall, what was your impression of the prior assessor?
She had seemed to have a pretty good knowledge of everything that was going on, and you know, knowledge of how to assess. But like I said, I wouldn't have been able to look at something and say, no, that's not right anyway. So I relied on her knowledge. But she was also one not really one to rock the boat, or, you know, she was kind of carry on. She had a lot of experience in the town when I got here already. So, you know, she kind of knew the way the assessing was done in the past and just continued it.
Did you have any
Not having any experience with assessing, I relied on her to do the job. It seemed to work out. But then you get a fresh set of eyes on it, and, you know, I mean, maybe there were things that shouldn't have been allowed, but. So
Did you ever have any when the previous assessor Della was working in town? Did you have any concerns about her not pursuing the assessment of certain properties, not being as diligent with regard to exemptions? Did you ever have any of those concerns?
I did not, no. I mean, I to give you an example, subsequently, I found out about I didn't even realize the Moose Club was an exempt property. I didn't get into the level of detail because I look at the gross grand list and, the different, and that's about it. So I would get that. I didn't get involved with it all before I became the director of finance because it was, as assistant, it wasn't my responsibility. But I looked at it as a gross grand list kind of thing, and I never had any reason to delve into individual unless somebody came in asking a specific question. I didn't get too many of those, so I didn't have any reason to look into it. Subsequently, when the Moose Club was rescinded, we turned around and talked to every, well, not every, we talked to a number of assessors and find out that we're about the only town in Connecticut that was given an exemption for the Moose Club. And based on what I learned after that, it's like, well, all of their fundraisers benefit the club members, so shouldn't be an exemption either. So I mean, that was something I learned. I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. And
Interesting. So is it fair to say that in hindsight, the town, with the previous assessor, should have not exempted the Moose Club?
I believe that's the case, yeah.
And do you believe that, as a result of the work of the new assessor, the town has been able to add the assessment of the Moose Club to the grand list?
Well, I mean, I know they added it. I know he added it, and then it was subsequently removed by the Board of Assessment Appeals. But like I said, I felt like he was justified in doing that. So with any of those cases that we had complaints about, we looked into the individual situations, and he seemed to be justified in the decisions that were made.
Do you remember when approximately when the previous assessor gave her notice of resignation or retirement?
Yeah, that gave her notice. I think she probably figure out which year we're talking about here. Todd started probably about December of 2021. Or did I miss a year? I think I missed a year. Probably about December of 2020, but it would have been the December prior to her retirement.
And then how long did she stay? Well, first of all, so it was a retirement, then not a resignation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, are you guys in pension in Enfield?
Pardon?
Is Enfield part of a pension?
Yes, we have our own plans.
And so, are you guys, are a new employee still subject to pension, or is it or are they not subject, or are they not eligible for pension?
They are still eligible for it, yes.
Nice. A lot of towns are out of it now.
Yeah.
So good for you guys.
Or they've converted to a defined contribution plan, but ours is still a defined benefit plan.
So with regard to her retirement, so she gave notice around December, and then when did she actually retire?
April. Let me check this.
Sure, take your time.
I'll get the exact year for you because you know what? They're blurred together with COVID.
I know, isn't that crazy? Take your time.
Okay, so her official termination date was 5/28/21. So it was a year off.
So when did she give notice then, and when did she actually leave?
It probably would have been around, her official notice would have been, I mean, she had been talking about it, so I wasn't surprised about it. I'm not sure exactly when her official notice would have been, probably around February of 2021 would have been her official letter of retirement.
So she actually ended up leaving during the revaluation, while the revaluation was taking place. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that started under her.
Did you have any concerns about her doing leaving during the revaluation process?
Not really, because we had experienced assistant underneath her, Vicky Rose. So, I mean, I know she's been here a number of years as well, so that kind of gave me less of a, less problems than I would have thought I would have had.
With regard to the revaluation, were you aware of the fact that Tom Tyler, who was the Board of Assessment Appeals chairman, issued a lengthy report where he described the Vision's work in the revaluation as being more than just a little flawed?
No,
Well, so I guess I'm telling you then for the first time, based on your understanding of what took place during the revaluation and based on, as you've described, your limited role in supervising it, did you or supervising the assessor during the revaluation, did you have any reason to believe that Vision's work was more than just a little flawed?
I had no reason to believe that. I mean, we've gone through, we used them in the past, and we've never had any issues like this. So, I mean, we used them for the interim the 5-year one we did in 2016. So I don't, there were no problems like this. I mean, they had the normal, okay, people come in and dispute it. So, there was changes in the property values but like I said, I discussed those with Della and we made allowances for them when I developed the tax revenue budget. And that's pretty much the extent.
Were
I
you
mean,
involved?
they do a lot of towns in the state. So I would have thought there would have been a big hue and cry from other towns as well, and I haven't heard anything like that. So
Were you involved with the interview process for Todd Helms?
I was, yes.
What was your role?
Well, I was on a panel that interviewed him.
And what was your general impression of him?
I thought he was fairly knowledgeable about the assessment process. We knew that as an assessment collection, it was an assessor collector position, that he would have to go through training on the collector side, but the assessment seems to me to be more of a specialty than the collector side, and it's harder to find. So I felt like we had a pretty good candidate.
Do you know how many other applicants were interviewed?
One other. And that was the assistant assessor, Vicky.
How long did the process go on for?
The interview process?
Yes.
I mean, it was probably about an hour.
No, I meant to say the overall process. For example, for how long you did it. Like, was it a 1 month process that you look for an assessor? 3 months? Do you have a recollection of how long it took?
Yeah, it wasn't an ongoing, drawn out process. We interviewed, we advertised for it, and I think we had the 2 applicants probably within a month, and so it was probably 2 to 3 months at most from advertising to selection. Kind of backing into the numbers, the time here, but it wasn't like we didn't get anybody and then we had to go re-advertise and start the whole process over. I had to do that with other positions, but not that one.
Did you speak with anyone from Bloomfield prior to hiring Mr. Helms?
I did not, no.
Are you aware
I
whether
believe we talked to, there were a couple of other employees, and I didn't actually talk to them, but there were another employee or 2 that now work for the town of Enfield that came from Bloomfield, and we spoke to them about them. I didn't, but I think Steve did.
And Steve is your personnel director, is that correct?
Yeah, Steve Belinda, yes.
So is your understanding that Mr. Belinda, prior to hiring Mr. Helms, did inquire with some people who had experience working with him?
Yes.
During the interview process with Mr. Helms, was it conveyed to him what the town was looking for in their new assessor, by way of changes or that were expected or hoped for, or a different approach that the town was hoping a new assessor would take? Was anything like that conveyed to him?
Not that I recall. I mean, basically, we had more of a like a questionnaire for him. And I don't know that we actually, I don't recall that at all.
Let me
Saying
ask
like,
you. Let
go
me
ahead.
ask you this: did anyone do you recall whether during the process it was conveyed to Mr. Helms that the town was looking for a new assessor to clean up some of the things in the assessor's office?
I mean, I don't recall, but if he'd asked a question about it, yeah, I probably would have, or Steve would have said something to that effect. Yeah, I mean, because like I said, a fresh set of eyes, I think I said that earlier, was, you come in anytime you see, I've come into new jobs. All right. When I came in here as the deputy or director, I did things different. I cleaned things up that were done by my predecessors. So I would have expected that. And that's something that I would have said. I don't recall saying it specifically, but, I mean, a fresh set of eyes on something I always think is good.
Fair enough. Was Todd given any, when he was hired, was Todd given any directives by your department or the town that you know of with regard to the position?
Specific directives?
If you could recall any.
Not really. I mean, we're throwing you into the middle of a revaluation, and he had experience, so expect him to do what he would know what to do.
Sure. How long has Mr. Helms been working with the town for approximately?
He would have started right around the time Della left, so it'll be almost 2 years in May.
And during that period of almost 2 years, what's been your overall impression of his work?
I feel like he's knowledgeable. I mean, like I said, we went through every one of those cases and made a good justification for what he did. Maybe he doesn't communicate it as the best to the taxpayer, but other than that, I mean, like I said, you get to something like the Moose Club. I mean, there seemed to me to be, I don't know why we would have had them. I mean, and I know that other towns have tax exempt issues with social clubs all over the town. My wife does the same thing that I do up in West Springfield. So I asked her about it. She's like, yeah, they have the same thing. They have the same issues that, after the Moose Club thing came up, I asked her about it. She's like, yeah, it's a common thing in towns. It seems to be anyway. I don't know too, but but he had, show me the statutes, whenever I had a question or a concern on something. I think maybe he was a little more aggressive on the, all right, we're going to disallow this, then, well, I know he was a little more aggressive in disallowing rather than allowing exemptions, but I mean, aside from that, that felt like that's more in the communication than what was actually justified by the evidence, the laws and what was supposed to happen in the assessment process.
You mentioned that he was knowledgeable. Aside from being knowledgeable, have you found him to be diligent in his work? Have you found him to be organized? How else would you describe his, you described him as being knowledgeable. How would you describe his work?
Yeah, I mean, anytime I had a question or, concern, he could pull up all the detail. He seemed to be thorough. He seemed to have everything documented as far as why, any kind of change was made. I've not seen any reason to question that.
How have you found his work as a supervisor of his department in the collector's department?
I haven't had really any complaints from his staff.
That's good. And otherwise, have you found his work to be with regard to any tasks? Have you had any issues with any of the work he's done in that
I
regard?
haven't, no.
You mentioned his interaction with the taxpayers as an area that maybe could be improved. I'm paraphrasing, I think, what you said.
Mhm.
How could you expand upon that a little bit?
Todd doesn't want to, he wants to be, I don't want to say it. He said to me a couple of times, he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to know about the background of the taxpayers because he feels like it'll influence the decision that he makes. And, my contention on that is, well, I think that you probably should know the background. It shouldn't change the decision that you make, but maybe how you present that decision to them. But that's, like I said, that's, I mean, he's now, right now, I think, well, I mean, I guess he was in Bloomfield. You're in a position that has to interact with the public. So, that's kind of the way I see it.
Since he came to the town, do you believe that his interaction with the public has improved?
I think it has a little bit. I haven't seen, right now. Well, I mean, it hasn't been that long, so I haven't been through another grand list with him yet. So I haven't had as many complaints since the reval.
Do you think that his interaction with the public needs to improve?
I think it could, yeah. And like I said, I haven't been getting the complaints. I haven't observed him lately firsthand or anything like that in the last probably 3 or 4 months. So, maybe it has.
Other than his interaction with the public, do you have any other concerns about his work with the town?
No, I don't. I mean, like I said, he valued one of the taxpayers' vehicles or several vehicles right on, they complained about it because they had gotten the value, but I understand that taxpayer sold the two vehicles for pretty much exactly what Todd was going to value them for.
Do
So,
you know which taxpayer you're referring to?
yeah, that's Jarmock.
So in that with regard to that matter, do you believe that that Todd was correct in the
I
way he
believe so,
valued it?
yeah.
And do you believe that he was vindicated by the actual sale price?
I think so, yeah.
Did you have any, have you had any involvement with or yeah, have you had any involvement with the appointment of any of the BAA members?
I have not, no.
Have you been involved with any oversight or supervision of the Board of Assessment Appeals?
No. I don't think that we even can supervise them. They're kind of an independent, supposed to be an independent body, aren't they?
I believe so. Did you know Mr. Tom Tyler prior to his appointment on the BAA?
I did not, no,
Did you know Donna Dubanowski prior to her appointment on the BAA?
no,
Did you know
no,
Lori Longy prior to her appointment on the BAA?
no.
Did you attend any of the Board of Assessment Appeals hearings in the past?
No, I've never been to one.
Are you, do you have any familiarity with the BA's decisions in the last 2 years?
Well, some familiarity with last year's, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Tell
Maybe
me
not
about
all of them.
tell me about what your general understanding is about the BA's decisions in last year's uh, um, meetings associated with the 2021 grand list decisions.
My understanding or my knowledge of it is, like I said, they changed a number of valuations that I didn't believe were justified. So one of them would be the Moose Club. Another one would be the Jarmock's properties for that were included in the Nutmeg Solar tax stabilization agreement. Actually, were not included in that, but they said they were included because I was involved in the development of the solar agreement, so I knew what properties were involved and what weren't. And then those vehicles, and then other specific, those ones all stick out in my mind because I had subsequent knowledge of what happened.
Tell me about the solar agreement that you just referred to.
So when Nutmeg Solar, it was actually NextEra Energy, and I believe they created a LLC that that's the actual company that runs the solar array. They negotiated with the landowners out there. They bought a number of properties and leased other properties. And what we analyzed what they were going to be doing, which properties they were acquiring, how much the business personal property of the solar arrays were, and projected the tax out for the next 20 years, and then said, okay, this is what we would collect if estimated. If it was following the normal process, basically divided that by 20 and said, okay, this is the amount you pay per year. But we did, like I said, we looked at all the individual properties that they were acquiring, which ones they were leasing. The ones they were leasing were left outside of the agreement because the agreement was with between us and Nutmeg Solar. It wasn't between, there were no individual taxpayers that were a party to that agreement. And if you're leasing, then the tax is owed by the property owner, not by the leasing company.
Sorry, so with regard to this property that you're referring to, who owned the property?
I believe that was Jarmark also.
So Jarbach owned the property, and there was a provider of the solar equipment. Is that correct?
Well, there were multiple pieces of property and multiple owners. Okay, and now this was about probably 3 or 4 years ago now.
And by the all the property was owned by just so we're clear, all the property was owned by Jarmark that you're referring to, correct?
Well, no, some of them, I believe that some of the properties were leased from other owners as well. But the only ones that went to the Board of Assessment Appeals were the Jarmark, because he's the one that came to the Board of Assessment Appeals, not any of the other ones.
Understood.
Not that I'm aware.
And so with regard to, could you send us the agreements if you don't mind on these?
Yeah, sure.
All right. And just if you, in an email, if you could just summarize what you know about it, that'd be helpful. And also if you could give us the agreements, if there's any sort of town council resolution, any meeting minutes, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And so you were involved then with the assessment agreement, with the essentially abatement agreement with regard to this equipment. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then what was your understanding about the appeal by the Jarmaks?
He went in, appealed the value of the property that he owned. And the Board of Assessment Appeals granted him, well, I guess they, from what I understand, and this is, I mean, I didn't see any of the documentation on it, but they reduced the value of that property to 0 because they said it was included in the Nutmeg Solar agreement. And it was, as far as I'm aware, it wasn't. we did a specific, specific analysis of it. So
do you believe that the BAA made a mistake in its decision with regard to the
I
property?
believe that was not justified. Yeah.
So you believe they made a mistake? Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you involved with any discussions with the farming community at large pertaining to the assessment of properties as farmland in town in the last few years?
Yes.
Yeah, what was your involvement?
Well, these were when some of the complaints came in. Blossoming Acres, I think is the name of, no, maybe that's not the name of. There was one farm.
Matt, do you recall that farm?
I don't recall that farm, but
No, do you? I think he was referring to, was it Easy Pickens as one of the farms?
That could be it.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's helpful to you.
But I may be confused. There's a Blossoming Acres in Southwick. I may be mixing them up here, but that was, I mean, it was one meeting that we had with the owner. And like I said, I think that I did say previously, there seems to be some gray area with how the Fiat 490 is applied. And that one may be one that Todd was more aggressive than our previous, but than Della would have been on it. But like I say, when you look at the statutes, you can kind of look at it and say, all right, well, yeah, I see where you come up with that.
Did you attend any meetings with farmers in the Farm Bureau that took place at Fermi High School?
I did not, no.
Have you or anyone from your office engaged the Department of Agriculture or the Farm Bureau with regard to the assessment of farmland in town?
No, I haven't. Not my office, but I'm not sure whether Todd did discuss anything with them or not.
Were you, now I'm going to move to a different subject. Well, before I move to a different subject, any other thoughts on the assessment of farmland in town?
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I think we should be following what the state law is, and in some cases, it's a little muddier than it would be than ideal.
Do you believe
I'm an
that?
accountant, so things are usually try to be black and white with them, you know.
Sure. Do you believe that? Do you believe the assessor that Mr. Holmes has improved the town's the manner in which the town assesses farmland since he's taken over?
Improved? Yeah, probably. It's probably a little bit more structured, I think, I would say, or more of a set process.
What would be the basis for that understanding?
I think that things are a little bit more organized than, and you know, I just my discussions with Todd himself, he tries to organize things, and you know, like I said, he's also more of a black and white kind of person, in some laws that are kind of gray. I mean,
Are you aware that the Board of Assessment Appeals hired its own attorney?
I was not, no.
Has anybody from the Board of Assessment Appeals attempted to get the town to make a payment for any bills associated with their own attorney, as far as you know?
They haven't brought anything to me.
Okay. Can we take just a 5-minute break? I just want to make sure we haven't missed anything, and then we'll resume. I think we're
Okay.
almost done as well.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna pause the recording. I'm just resuming the recording, so we're back on. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we end? I'm done. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Mr. Wilcox, before we're over, before we finish?
Yeah, I just one of the, you know, I had said before that Todd had said that he wanted to not really know about people's background. Well, he's also specified when he told me that is that he wanted to be consistent with how he applied the appraisal rules to all taxpayers in town. And I did go into that detail before on it, and that's where I said, well, you know, that doesn't change. I don't feel that changes. You still want to be consistent with how you apply it, you know, but how you present it to the taxpayer may be different depending on their situation and stuff. So that's I just wanted to be a little more clear on that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. If you could email that the documents we had asked for with regard to the solar agreement, that'd be great. And if there's anything else that you think of that's relevant, you think, to our review of these issues, please be in touch. Send me an email, give me a call anytime.
Okay.
Thank you
Sounds
for your
good.
time.
Thanks, Mario. Thanks.
Bye.
Matt.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.